بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Question says, is it permissible to eat raccoon or a possum or alligator or squirrel, etc.? Then we say in al-Islam and in the Sharia al-Islamiyah, foods being lawful and foods being unlawful or prohibited. Specifically, the prohibited type of foods are going to be unlawful for one or two reasons. The first is going to be based off of a specific text from the Kitab or from the Sunnah, something that's specific. And the second is going to be a type of animal or type of food, يعني يرجع إلى ضوابط التحريم. The different precise rulings or the regulations, the boundaries, the guidelines of what is good and what's bad, what's lawful and what's unlawful. Everybody understand this? An example of something specifically prohibited in the Sunnah or in the Quran pertaining to a type of food or an animal will be what? Of course, the flesh of swine. The flesh of what?
Swine.
Flesh of swine. Everybody understand this? Lahm al-khinsir. Swine, including a pig, a wild boar, a hog, etc. طيب, that's his nas sarih. Okay, on an animal. We're not getting in type of the different things pouring, the blood that's pouring forth, animal that wasn't slaughtered properly. We're talking about just the specific, the hayawan itself. That's nas sarih. Also, the hadith in Sunan Abi Dawood, in which the Prophet ﷺ is quoted to have said, even if it's not the most authentic narration, and the Nabi ﷺ naha an qatl al-qunfudh, that the Prophet ﷺ, he forbade the eating and the killing of a what? Of a hedgehog. Of a what? Of a hedgehog. And some may translate it to porcupine, but that which seems to be most correct is that it's a hedgehog. Al-Muhim, that's something specific. And there are many other things as well. And then if there's nothing, the specific animal isn't spoken about in Hadith or in the Quran and Hadith, then it's going to go back to general prohibitions, such as dhu nab, that has the nabain. Whether you mean that as incisor teeth or canine teeth, because that's an issue of translation as well. An animal that hunts, an animal that's carnivorous. Naam, an animal that's jalala, that eats waste and excrement. The specific hadith Abdullah ibn Umar on that. The animal that yakul al-jiyaf, that eats dead carcasses. Everybody understand this? Or that which is khabith. That which is khabith. Linguistically meaning foul and filthy and dirty. Everybody understand this? وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ. Allah says in the Quran, Surah 7, Al-A'raf, the description of the Prophet ﷺ, الَّذِينَ يَجِدُونَ مَكْتُوبًا عِندَهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ وَالْإِنْجِيلِ يَأْمُرُهُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَاهُمْ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. Allah says, the Nabi, the Ummi, this messenger, this prophet, this illiterate man that these Jews and that these Christians find in their scriptures. And what's the description of this man in their scriptures? He enjoins them with the good. He forbids them from the evil. He makes lawful for them the tayyib. He makes unlawful for them that which is khabith. وَيَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِسْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. And he removes from them the hardships, the fetters, and the burdens that were upon them. The bid'ah that the Jews made after Musa and Harun, and the hardships came, he removes that from them. The hardships that the Christians made upon themselves, he removes that from them. So Muhammad ﷺ Sharia is to make the halal al-tayyib and make haram khabith. So anything which is considered khabith, even if it isn't specifically spoken about in hadith, is prohibited. Is what? It's prohibited. If it's what? Khabith. Whether you're talking about cigarettes, whether you're talking about an animal, a drink, this, that, anything that's considered what? Khabith. Everybody understand this? So the question is now, is a raccoon considered khabith? We say in the northern part of the United States, especially New York City, Philadelphia, I don't think any person is going to differ on the fact that a raccoon is what? Khabith. In the inner city. In the what? It's the inner city. Last night, the night before, a couple of days, we saw 3 raccoons right back there in the alleyway to Masjid. Big ones. Wallahi. They had a jama'ah with them. And imam and everything. Everybody understand this? But is that the same as you seen a raccoon upstate New York? That's eating berries, that's eating flowers, that's eating natural things in the woods, drinking fresh water. It's not going through waste, sanitary napkins, dirt, grease, car exhaust. It's a different story. Everybody understands? So what? It's a different story. The same may apply to a possum. A possum in the inner city may be from the worst creatures. Out in the wild may be totally different. Or a concept of a swamp rat down south. People, they eat it. I'm not saying I would eat it, but many people, they eat it. And they consider it not to be what? Khabith. Rather, they see it as a pure animal that feeds off natural forage, things like this in the forest. So the fact is that we don't have no specific nas saying that a raccoon is haram. The question is it khabith? Or does it have claws? Does it have mikhlab? Even though the hadith says, an kulli li mikhlabin min at-tayr, birds that have claws. But the concept is a raccoon carnivorous? Does it kill? Will it kill? Does it hunt? Everybody understand this? So these questions have to be what? They have to be answered. Does a raccoon hunt or not? Well, then it's a what? It's a siba. It has teeth, incisors, canine teeth, has claws, and it's also carnivorous. Let alone the concept of people considering it to be what? Khabith. But it was something that wasn't like that, that didn't hunt, that's a different story. Everybody understands this is a general rule of foods of different types of animals. We did a class on this years ago, maybe 5 years ago in Philadelphia. You find it on the internet, YouTube, called Foods in Islam. You look for it, you search it, and so on another person's channel before the Hadith Disciple channel was made. Maybe we'll like the video to put it there. And we talked about this, reading a specific kalam from Ahlul Ilm, from the people of knowledge. So therefore, a raccoon, a possum, things like this are all going to what? Go back to that. As far as an alligator, same thing. Is an alligator a fish? Is it a reptile? Everybody understand this? Is it amphibian? Does it hunt? Is it sabr? Is it carnivorous? Because there's rulings on amphibious things. It lives in the water and it goes on land. What, or how long does it stay in the water? How long does it stay on land? When it goes on land, does it hunt? Does an alligator hunt on land, or does an alligator hunt where? In the water. Whack at that. So these are different dawabit. And the ulama of Islam, they differed over eating alligator and crocodile. Some say yes, some said no. And the reason why they do is because of these what? These dawabit, plural of dawabit. Everybody clear on this? Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Question.
Tfadal.
Can you kill a raccoon or a possum just out of entertainment, or just because you don't like it to be in
And
your
the
backyard?
Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he forbade for anything with a soul in it to be taken as a target. To be taken as a target. Anything with a soul in it to be taken as a what?
Target.
As a target. Okay? And there's specific hadith about certain things being killed. Certain animals. But that's just taking an animal as a means of pleasure and enjoyment, and target practice is prohibited. Prohibited in Islam. Based off of that hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam.
Even if you don't eat it.
Anything that's a soul is not to be made as a target practice. Just hunting and just shooting at it. That's first and foremost. As far as if the animal is mu'thi, if it's causing you annoyance and harm and abundance, destroying your property, making things hard and dangerous for you, then you have the ability to prevent it. However you can prevent it. Whether you catch it in a cage and then send it to the city. Whether you have some type of animal that prevents those things from coming in your yard. Whether you have a trap or something like this. But the concept of punishing an animal, torturing an animal, capturing an animal isn't good. And alhamdulillah, there are many different ways of preventing animals from coming in your stuff. Many different ways. Whether it's what type of trash can you have, the lid that you have, putting up a gate, whatever the case may be. Or even a trap that is not going to harm the animal. That's best. And only Allah knows those animals coming into your yard. Who says that they can't come into your yard? They were there before you. They don't have a right to Allah's rizq. You have a house, now no one can bother me, no one can come and eat my stuff. How much food do you waste? What is in your trash can that makes the bear come and eat out of your trash can? Unless you're doing something haram, wasting food. Bears, raccoons, they don't eat plastic and paper. It's not a goat. They're going in there for what? Food that you're wasting. So there's a different way of thinking now. Thinking about it. You gotta look what? Gotta read what? Beneath the surface. Scratch beneath the surface. You have to pay attention to this. So the animal seeking the laws of rizq, okay, what gives you the right to kill it and torture it now? Because of your wastefulness. I would advise to use preventative measures from getting the animal from bothering you. Also not to waste food. Let alone putting the food back into the earth, into the environment. They call it compost, things like this that helps it out instead of just wasting it. And let alone the fact only Allah knows the barakah that may come to you through those animals. La tadri, you do not know. Wallahu alam. Tafadhal, Rashid.
Have you heard of any ikhtilaf on eating shrimp because they're scavengers?
Al-Muhim, anything that comes from the sea, the general rule is that's permissible to eat. That's the general rule to Jumhur Ahl al-Ilm wal Fuqaha. And others, they say that the general rule is that something that Yaqul al-Jif, or something that is carnivore, or something that is khabith. And they generalize that over that proof. So this is ta'arud al-umumain. Yani, for argument's sake, because not necessarily, but they say it's ta'arud al-umumain. Like the Prophet ﷺ forbade a person from making salah after salat al-asr until the sun sets. And he also said when you come in the masjid, do what? The Prophet لم يقل تحية المسجد قال يصلي ركعتين. هذه التسمية جاءت أيوة هذا ليس من كلام النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم تحية المسجد. هل يصح هذا تحية المسجد؟ أنت تحيي المسجد ولا تحية رب المسجد؟ هذه غير. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال حتى يصلي ركعتين. So one general rule is not to make salah after asr, and the other general rule is what?
Make two.
Aywa. So they say two generalities coming together. Tazahum ish, umumain, clashing, butting heads. Which one takes precedence? And the same applies to this, to some fuqaha. Allah says, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَحْرِ وَطَعَامُهُ مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِلسَّيَّارَةِ وَحُرِّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَرِّ مَا دُمْتُمْ حُرُمًا. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah says, made lawful to you صَيْدُ الْبَحْرِ وَطَعَامُهُ, the game of the sea and its food, living or dead. The Prophet ﷺ says, هُوَ الطَّهُورُ مَاءُ الْحِلُّ مَيْتَةُ. The water is pure and clean, and the dead is lawful to eat. And then they also say that the Prophet ﷺ forbade eating things which have claws, things which eat dead bodies, things which are scavengers. Which of the two takes what? Takes precedence. So some ulama may say that, and others may say this. What seems to be apparent is that the generality of the food of the sea is stronger. Because the Prophet ﷺ, in most cases, when he was talking about dead animals, claws, and fangs, he was speaking about what? Land and air. Not just land. He's talking about birds as well. He's talking about land animals and what?
Yeah.
Everybody understand this? You eating chicken is not the same as you eating a falcon or a hawk. It's a tough animal, a tough bird. Let alone it's hard to come by. It's difficult. It's very scarce. It's a very smart bird. It's not just easily caught. Even a chicken is too, but it not as. You get your hands on an eagle or a hawk, it's very difficult. Trust me, I have experience on this. Don't ask me how, but I do. So the concept of the animal, its meat being tough and hard, it's a rare, scarce bird, it's hard to come by. You eating that animal that hunts, that swoops, that sinks its talons into another bird, is going to have an effect upon you. It's going to have a what? An effect upon you. So that's from the hikmah of these things being prohibited. And that's what the Prophet was speaking about, claws and fangs. Animals that are what? On land, and animals that fly. And not necessarily speaking about the bahar. Not necessarily what? Speaking about the bahar. Then you look at the nature of the meat. You take an animal that has claws and fangs, how tough it is, and then you look at shrimp. Shrimp, I'm allergic to shrimp. I don't eat shrimp. I've had it before in my life. Shrimp is from the most delicate food you can eat. Scallops, mussels, things like this is from the what? From the softest meat you can have. You see the akal here is different now. It's from the most what? Delicate, thin, soft, easily digested meat that you can eat. So it's a difference what the Prophet was talking about and what he meant. Let alone the concept of the sea. An animal that eats carrion on ground, on land, is not like something that lives thousands or hundreds of feet beneath the water, on the floor. The salt, the water, the environment. It's what? Different. Totally different. Let alone the fact that shrimp and fish, these things, they don't have blood in them. Some fish, big fish have blood, but a shrimp has what? It's not necessarily no blood. But this cow, this animal, this thing that eats and claws something that's dead, the poison, okay, the germs, the aggression of the animal in the meat, in the blood, in the skin, it's not the what? It's not the same as a shrimp. It's not the same as a what? A shrimp. All of these things are from the hikmah, which show you that this sea is not, the generality takes precedence over what? The other generality. Everybody understand this? Maybe this is maybe too deep. Just trying to explain a point here. The sea, those things in the sea are not the same. A fish is not the same as an animal what? on land. A shark is not like any type of fish that may eat things. Even if it's a piranha, a shark is different. It's a huge, big animal. Everybody understand this? In comparison to some other fish. At the end of the day, that's the nas and that's the text. فالذي يظهر هو القول بالجواز. لكن أنت لو أردت الخلاف عن العلماء والفقهاء هذا موجود. والله تعالى أعلم.
You just mentioned these animals may have an effect upon you. So what's the hikmah with camel that you're going to wudu? Like, is it because
some of the ulama say that camel meat, the reason why you should make wudu is because a camel is a haughty animal. A haughty, arrogant, prideful type of animal. And sometimes fierce and aggressive. So they say from the hikmah of it is that you make wudu from it. A sheep and a goat, very seldom are they going to be aggressive. Very seldom. Every now and then they may poke each other, jump around. Very seldom. Chicken, fish, these things very, very seldom are they what? Aggressive. But a camel is a tough, rough animal. Not like a horse, not like nothing else. It'll spit on you. It'll bite you. It may kick you. It may even crush you, kneel upon you. A camel is a very vengeful animal, they say. Very vengeful animal. If you abuse it, if you mistreat it, it'll take revenge against you even years later. They say they never ever forget who beat them. Literally, stories about this. Okay? From the Bedouins. Said one camel crushed the guy when he was asleep one night. Plopped upon him because he mistreated him for years. And he never ever forgot. You know what they say? Elephant memory? Have what? Camel memory. So a camel, some of the ulama say is a hardy animal. Unlike those other small type of animals. Let alone the fact that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned about Dalatul Ibil, a lost camel. He says, what? Leave the camel alone. It has its hump, it has its hoofs, it can defend itself. A sheep or goat, he says, laka, he says either for you, what, or? A wolf. There's a harm, it can't defend himself against a wolf, but a camel is a bit what? It's a bit different. So the concept of the camel being haughty and arrogant, some of the ulama say that you should make wudu afterwards. And some of the ulama even may say, as is mentioned in some narrations, that it may be even a form of a jinn. Naam. And some of the creation being relative to that of a jinn. And shayateen. It's mentioned in some narrations, not all of the ulama, some of them they say this. And it's one of the reasons why you don't pray in their pens. But you can make salah in the pens of sheep and goat. I'm going to go too deep. Now, this is what some of the ulama say from the wisdom. What's important, as Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala said, Sahafi hadithani an Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says there are two hadiths that are authentic from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And most of the ulama hold the view that you do not have to make wudu after camel meat. Jumhur al-fuqaha. The vast minority of ulama, such as Imam Ahmad, Imam Ishaq ibn Rahaway, and others, they have the view that you do, based off of those two hadiths. And most of the fuqaha, they say that the hadith states, al-wudu mimma kharaja wa laysa mimma dakhala. They say wudu is from that which exits the body, not that which enters the body. They use ra'i in front of nas. Al-muhim, the most happy person is he who takes the hadith of the Prophet as his faith. So some of the ulama, they mention this, just like you make wudu when you're angry and things like this. And if that isn't the case, we say, what? Allahu ta'ala a'lam. That's what the Prophet instructed us to do. What is mandatory or recommended, that's what he what? Arshad ilayhi alayhi salatu. Wallahu ta'ala.